Okay, so this is going to be a quick review. If you would like to see a more extensive ride review on how I came to some of the conclusions that I have, there's another video that we'll link to at the end of this one. You can watch the full ride review of where I kind of test out some of the stuff that I'm going to show you. So to start off with, a couple of things that Evolve really got right. At least in my personal opinion, the shape of it's pretty good, fits in the hand okay. The throw on the throttle, they really increased the amount of the length of throw on the throttle, and in the long run, that gives them a lot of area to play with if they want to map the triggers to respond differently in different modes, that kind of a thing. So that'll be interesting for them. The brake also, nice long throw. Seemed to be really easy to manipulate. Doesn't it responds well in the various modes. They've got that sorted out pretty good. Now, with that said, the caveat to both the throttle and the brake is, do not use this remote right out of the box. In my particular case, I don't know whether this is true of all of them, but the throttle was okay, but the brake actually tried to kill me. As soon as I even went anywhere near it with my thumb, the board would come to a violent stop. Not good. So my advice is that as soon as you get the new remote, go through the mapping procedures to calibrate both the trigger and the brake. I'll link to that in the description of the video so that you can find the video for how to do that. We'll go into that here. So yeah, great job there. They also included a dead man switch. I particularly like the dead man switch, especially the way that Evolve programmed it, so that you really only need it to get the board going, and then you can relax it. And the next time you'll need to use it is if you come to a complete stop or a near complete stop. And so that's a good idea, because especially on the old remote, you would have this maybe on a lanyard or something, and you'd bump it, and the board would want to zip out. So. Real good job on that. For my personal preference, I feel that the remote could have been a little bit larger. I think that it might not be designed fully around an adult hand. I found myself, as I was riding, with my finger mostly on the very tip of the remote and on the tip of the brake. So. That maybe is room for improvement on the R3 remote. And then it comes down to some of the things that maybe they didn't get quite right on. We'll start off with the near miss. Let me turn both of these on so that we can see this more clearly. So the first thing you notice about the screen is that it's smaller than the old remote. They say that it's clearer, and in looking at it, that may be true. But at some point, it doesn't matter how clear the display is if you can't read it. Now, okay, I'm old and my eyes aren't that great anymore, and so maybe that's more of an issue for me. That's not really Evolve's problem. But here's what is a difficulty with this remote, and it's got two parts. So the first part is that they decided, for whatever reason, to put a curved lens over the remote. Well, with a flat lens, if you get glare, you can rotate it slightly and get it away from the light source, and then the glare goes away. If you put a curved surface on, there's no direction that you can turn this where you don't get some glare. Now that became a real issue because of the second thing that is a bit off with this particular remote. So when I bring the remote up to look at it and shield it and bring it close to my blind old eyes, as soon as I rotate it up so that I can see the screen, the board cuts out. So if you watch the ride review that I did, I go into a little bit more detail about what happens with that as far as the range goes. I took the old remote and did the same ride, and I held the old remote in a position that I never hold it. Now when I look at the remote, the old LCD remote, when I look at that, I have to pull my thumb away, because that's one thing that they did really, another thing that they did really get right on the new remote is they put the whole screen in front of your hand so that you can actually read it while you're riding. But I'd rotate my hand back so that I could see the display, and I'd even bring it fairly close so that I could read what I needed to, right, and then bring it back down and continue riding. One thing I never did with this remote was hold it upside down. Well, why would you do that? That's a position that the remote will never be in, and so therefore that's consequently a position I never held this old remote in. In the ride review that I did, I experimented with orientation because I was trying to figure out why the board kept cutting out. Why was the range on this new remote, why did it seem like it was so short? Well, as it turns out, when I hold the old LCD remote upside down, the board cuts out. So it's got to do with the orientation of the antenna for the transmitter. Well, if you look at the new remote, when you're holding it down at waist level, it's all good. But when you rotate it up to look at the screen, it's the same thing as the old remote held in an inverted position. So for me anyway, whenever I look at the screen, the remote now is in that inverted position, and the board cuts out. So that's a tricky solve. So Evolve has some work to do, especially if you're bringing it up, shielding the glare, trying to come up to see it. Yeah, that's going to be that's going to be an issue that's a little difficult to solve. The last issue that I have with this remote is that they decided to replace the percentage readout that they used to have, showing the percentage of battery power left, with a skateboard. And though it's cute, the skateboard bar graph really doesn't tell me much. Now, another video that I have posted here, link again at the end of this video, I did an exhaustive range review of the Evolve Carbon GT equipped with the ABEC 107 millimeter wheels. Wow. The board has a range of about 30 miles, and that's with a 218-pound rider on it. Now, in that range review, I made extensive use of the percentage that's displayed on the remote. And I also go into detail about how that percentage varies between what it shows while the board is at rest and what it shows while the board is under load. The information that percentage provides you allows you then to track where you are in that curve and would allow a rider to know what percentage they have, what percentage load they were using, and be able to calculate out in their head pretty rapidly how many miles they have left in the board. I think that's a lot more difficult to do with the bar graph that they provide on the new remote. Now, they do have diagnostic tools in the new remote that are available to you. You can actually see things like exact battery level per section of the battery. So you can be able to do a health check on the battery. You can do motor speeds and that kind of a thing. But back to the display. It's not something that I can just click a button and have it displayed on. I have to go through a bunch of double-click menus and then get it displayed. And it will show it, so I don't have to flip back and forth. So the information is still there, but if I try to look at it and use it in some way, so it just made it more difficult for the rider to actually get hold of some of the information that I feel would be really helpful on a long ride. And if we were talking about a board that had a 7-mile range or something like that, none of this would matter. But we're not. We're talking about a board that has 20 miles to 30 miles depending on which wheels you're running. And so I think it's really important that as Evolve moves forward, that they alter some of the firmware so that it gives the rider that access to that kind of information. That's basically it. It fits good. They did a good job there. In their R3 remote, they're going to need to address where they position that antenna so that the remote is actually able to be read by the rider. They're also going to have to address the curved surface on over the LCD screen. But it's nice and bright. It's a good clear LCD. They did a good job of sourcing the right screen, sourcing the right components. So that's about it. So thanks for watching. I hope this was interesting to you. Hopefully it provided some information on that helped you out in your decision on which remote to go with. I don't know whether they're still offering this remote. I hope they are, because on a long ride, until they address the percent issue, it's going to be more difficult for me to judge how far I have left to ride. When I initially got this remote, I was thinking, oh great, now I have a backup remote that I can use. Now I'm torn. Do I want to ride with a really good trigger, a really good throttle, and a really good brake? Or do I need the information enough that I would actually use this remote? And so I think over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'll be able to make that decision a little better. And we'll see. I'll see what my actual choice is. But for now, I'm not getting rid of the old LCD remote. And it may not even be my backup. This may actually wind up being my primary my primary remote, which sucks because I really like this throttle. They did a great job of the throttle mapping. So, hope you found this helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe. We'll be putting out many more of these videos. Please follow along with our energy sovereignty project. You'll probably find that to be a little fun as well. And thanks for watching.